3 years ago, we installed this dry bar in our home using off-the-shelf materials, and today it is finally getting the makeover that it very much deserves. Before we dive into today's video, don't forget to take a second to hit the subscribe button so that you don't miss any of our upcoming video. I'm sure, like me, you watch a ton of HGTV, and I feel like over the last couple of years, all of the shows are really focused more on whole home renovations, and they have really big budgets. But for a lot of us, that's not the reality. So we bought our house 4 years ago, and we lived in it for a year before we did a single project. We didn't paint, we didn't do anything in that first year that we lived here. I wanted to live in this space to really get a feel for it before we did anything. The layout was unlike anything else that we had ever had, and was certainly not the layout that we were looking for. But until you live in a home, you don't really know. It was one of those things that's like, this is not what we expected, but maybe we're gonna love this layout the way that it is. And so we lived with it for a year. And you know what? We wanted to change the layout. We knew immediately that we needed to find a way to tear down the wall between our kitchen and these spaces to make these rooms more functional. So that was 3 years ago. And we didn't do it all at once. That first phase of the renovation took us a year, a full year. And we reused a lot of the materials that were already here. And over the last 3 years, we have been doing things weekend by weekend, project by project, to get us to this point. Now, 4 years after moving into this home, we have replaced all of the floors. We have painted every wall. We have replaced the baseboards. We've done a couple of major things like taking out 2 non-structural walls in our home, but there's still a lot to do. So when we did that renovation 3 years ago, one of the things that we did at that time to save money was reuse as much as we could. And I think that's important to recognize where your limits are and what your budget is, and realize that you can do renovations in phases, and it doesn't all have to get done at once, and it also doesn't all have to get done in a year. It can be 3 years later. So this bar area, this little wall here had nothing on it. It felt like a great place to put in a little dry bar. So that's what we did. The countertop is Ikea butcher block that we cut down to size. The cabinet is a stock cabinet from Home Depot. So we did this really inexpensively. The shelf brackets I ordered off of Etsy. And this wood is actually a 1x6 that we cut down. So it's not even connected. It's a mess. But 3 years later is when we're finally gonna give it the update it deserves. We waited the 3 years to do it. One, because it functioned perfectly fine for the last 3 years, and now we need some additional storage over here, so I'm taking that as an opportunity to give it a design facelift as well. But also, it wasn't a priority. So you know what? You don't have to do everything all at once. You can do it weekend by weekend, and you can do it on a budget, and that's what I'm gonna show you as we continue through all of these Weekend Warrior videos. Before I tell you what the plans are for this bar today, I'm going to clear it off, and then we'll dive in to what we're gonna do. The second one was a little bit easier than installing the first one. Couple of reasons. One, you figure things out as you go. Second, installing over a cabinet was so hard, especially by myself. So if you can somehow avoid installing over permanently installed items, that's very strongly suggested. So I think that's why this one was easier, because I was able to move the wine fridge. But anyways, so I got them both up. Overall, tutorial works really well. I will say this, if you are planning to do like a really big space, I would find a temporary wallpaper versus trying to turn a regular wallpaper into a temp wallpaper. This would be really time consuming to do like on a whole big massive wall or a big space. So it was great for this. I've been working on it since about 7 a.m. It's 11:30 now. So do the math. That's how long it took me to do this wall. Did have to run to get Scotch tape. So that took part of it, but that's about how long it took me. So anyways, here's where we're at. I trimmed at the top, which you can barely see, but I went ahead and caulked that in because I didn't get a very clean cut. And then I caulked down next to my cabinet and at the baseboard as well, just to make that look a little bit cleaner. Happy that I did that. Next thing I'm gonna do is I'm going to run to the hardware store and get just a sample of paint in this same blue that's on the wallpaper. My wall was 54¼ inches, and my wallpaper with 2 panels totaled 54 inches. So there was a 1/4 inch gap on the other side of the wallpaper. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna match the blue, and I'm just gonna fill that in with the blue, and then I think it's gonna look really complete. It looks odd with the white, so I'm gonna fill it in with the blue. And then I'll get my shelf sign back up, and we'll be all done. So excited. All right, the bar is done. I could not be happier with how it turned out. This was such a fun little quick, simple one-day project, and it has completely changed the look of this space. So I want to talk to you guys really quickly about time and cost of this project. So at the beginning, you heard me mention that we had part of this already in place. This has been 3 years in the making since we did the initial renovation. This was a short little wall, 54½ inches. There's not a ton that we could have done with it. So this was the best use that we could find for the space for the way that we live in this home. So let's talk about phase 1 first. So phase 1 of this project was the cabinet, the countertop, and then the wine fridge. The wine fridge we actually already owned, but I will include that in the cost in case you are starting from scratch. So the countertop is just like Ikea butcher block. This piece was, I believe, about 6 foot in length. We had to trim it down to size to fit our needs. And it was somewhere around $150 for this Ikea butcher block when we bought it. So that's what that was. The cabinet is just a stock cabinet from Home Depot. So this is not anything special. It is just an off-the-shelf cabinet. And it was actually a return cabinet. Someone had purchased it and brought it back. So we got an open box discount on top of it. So I think normally it's somewhere around $150. We ended up getting this cabinet for about $80 because it wasn't open box. We did have to buy the hardware, so the knob here and then the handle as well were about $6 each, so we've got about $12 in hardware. And then our wine fridge was actually another Home Depot find, and it has held up really well. We have had this for probably 5 or 6 years now, and we got it, like I said, at Home Depot, and it was on a Black Friday special. So it was normally I don't even know what the normal price was, but we got a really great deal on it. It was around $200 for this wine fridge. So if you need one, I really strongly suggest, if you can waiting till Black Friday, you're gonna get a great deal. But also looking at a place like Home Depot or Lowe's, this has held up really well for us, and it was not super expensive, so it's been a great purchase. Also part of phase one was this first lower shelf. So not the wood, that was separate, but the brackets. The brackets we ordered off of Etsy, and they were $12 each. So we had about $36 in brackets. And that completed phase one. That was all we did in the first phase of getting this bar in. So let's talk about cost of the next phase. And let's backtrack. Talking about time really quickly, this first phase also only took us about a day to get in. It was installing the cabinet, throwing the butcher block on top. That was it, and installing the brackets for the shelf. So again, first project, one day. If you were doing this all at one time, I would definitely think you could get the whole thing done in a single weekend. So phase two, which is what I showed you guys in this video, was the wallpaper and the second shelf. And that really made such a huge difference in the overall look of this space. I used Studio DIY's wallpaper tutorial, which is turning traditional wallpaper into a temporary wallpaper. The reason I wanted to do that was I wasn't 100% sure that Rob was gonna love the wallpaper. And also, if you've ever taken wallpaper down, you were a little hesitant to install it because the taking it down process is challenging at times. So that's why I wanted to go the temporary option here. And also, if we ever change our mind style-wise, then it's easy to pull down also. So I had actually bought this wallpaper for another project, ended up not using it, and have been holding on to it for about 3 years now. So in terms of cost out this weekend to put it in, very minimal cost. However, if you had to buy the wallpaper, this roll cost me $78 from Serena and Lily, and I did not use a whole roll. The roll comes with about 60 square feet, and I only needed about 20. So still have some of that left over that I can use on a future project as well. We did add a second shelf, so that was 3 more brackets at a cost of $36. The painter's tape that you saw me putting up, the blue tape, we already had that as well. But if you have to go and buy a roll, depending on the size roll, you're probably looking at like $5 or $6 in painter's tape. And then the double-sided Scotch tape, the permanent double-sided Scotch tape, for this wall, I needed 3 rolls, so that cost me about $15 for those 3 rolls. So that's where we're at cost-wise. Oh, I forgot one more cost in this project. I rebuilt the shelves. We had before had picked up a pine 1x6 and cut it in half and threw it on the shelf. So it was not connected, it was actually 2 boards. It was really flimsy, it wasn't the full width, it was a whole thing. So I went ahead and rebuilt these shelves using maple, stained them and sealed them the way that we would like them for our style. So in the wood, because I did go up in quality from what you might find at a hardware store, I went with maple. These 2 shelves cost me about $50 to build, just in materials and stain and the linseed oil that I used to seal them up. So that's where we're at cost-wise. Overall, fairly inexpensive project for the impact that it has. And what I love about this as well is if our needs ever change in this house, if this ever needs to become something else, it can really easily without some additional expense or things like that. But it adds a lot of style, it adds a lot of functionality, and we use the heck out of it. So that's what I have for you guys today. I hope you enjoyed. If you are tackling any projects this weekend, I would love to see them. Be sure to share them with us. You can tag us on social media. Comment below. Let us know. Don't forget to hit subscribe. We will see you guys next time.